Bad morning, everybody. Today is October 31st, 2018. Welcome to episode 73 of Bad Morning News, where we typically cover all the negative news stories out there that may or may not get attention from the mainstream media. And even if they do show up in mainstream media, they typically will just, you know, ex- explore the most ridiculous and divisive points about stories and not really any actual substance. So we try to combat that here on Bad Morning News. But with that, I think every day is Halloween for Bad Morning News. At least I kind of feel that way, reading the stories every day. A lot of stories that do deeply inspire fear and apprehension about a lot of aspects of society and the future as well. And not necessarily, in a way, just to be afraid. I mean, there is fear mongering out there. I'm not saying, I want everyone to be afraid all the time, but I think it is important to be aware. And the stories covered today are a lot more real than a lot of the portrayals that'll be out there today of a lot of fictional characters, but I do enjoy those as well. I just watched Halloween and Halloween, the 20th anniversary movie yesterday to get prepared. It was a good follow up to A Bad Morning and all the terrifying news typically read, but I don't really do too much on Halloween lately. I kind of feel bad about it because I do somewhat enjoy, the idea of getting to wear costumes and that type of thing. But I'm just not good at it, to be honest. I'm not really. I've never been super good at picking a really elaborate costume and pulling it off really well. But let me know if you guys have plans today, or if you guys do anything particular for Halloween. Because I'm interested in hearing that. It sounds. I'll just have to live vicariously through all of you. And bad morning to you, Danielle and Max. Good to see you guys. And a couple notes to get out of the way before I keep rambling. Thank you to Brave Browser for sponsoring the show. If you are tired of the typical corporations out there selling off all of your data to the highest bidder and the government, give Brave Browser a try. If you download their browser via the link in the description, it benefits the show. So thank you to anyone considering doing that. And we are also looking for new hosts for Bad Morning News. Let us know if you're interested in either hosting this morning slot or potentially an afternoon slot down the road. Give us a shout out in Discord or in the comments of this video. And with that, I am Cryptic Cynic with you here this spooky morning in the cloudy, very creepy looking Pacific Northwest. Yeah, I'm already scared. But anyway, we'll get to this first article this morning. I found this via Reason. I don't go trolling around on people.com typically, so I just want to defend myself a little there. But this article is from people.com, written by someone named Char Adams. Michigan town reverses clown ban on Halloween. After backlash, people have phobias and anxiety. A Michigan town has reversed its ban on clown costumes at an annual Halloween event for children after social media users condemned the decision. Oak Park officials initially included a new stipulation earlier this month when they announced the city's annual Boo Bash event. Officials stated that children were permitted to dress as their favorite spooky characters, but clown costumes not allowed. This event is centered around young children. In the past few years, many clown costumes have been given a very scary and evil look. Recreation Director Lori Stasiak told the Oakland County Times, "Many scary and horror movies are centered around these types of characters." About 3 years ago, there were national incidents in the news, and people were dressing up as clowns and scaring people, and in some cases, assaulting them. Many people have phobias and anxiety about clowns. It's because of this that we asked people not to dress up as clowns for this community event. However, the rule for the October 31 children's event didn't sit well with many social media users. Many commented on the Oakland County Times Facebook post about the news. What's scarier than clowns? I thought that's what Halloween is all about. One person wrote, clown costumes have sparked controversy in recent years. In 2016, repeated reports of creepy clowns across the country fueled the clown panic at the time. An expert previously told People that the clown panics trace back decades to the 80s and reports of phantom clowns trying to lure or abduct children. Still, many social media users suggested that city officials may have been overreacting by implementing the ban, and on Tuesday, city manager Eric Tungate announced the reversal of the ban in a statement. The city will not ban people with clown costumes or any other from participating in the Boo Bash event. However, we are encouraging parents to use their best judgment given this is an event that caters to families and small children, the statement read. Oak Park city officials did not immediately respond to requests for comment from People. That's the end of that article. Just starting out somewhat light here with the city trying to protect people from scary clowns. I guess that's an important thing to remember if we, if there's no government, there's no one to protect us from scary clown costumes. I think I'm sure most of you out there would be really sad about that um, because who can come up with such random and arbitrary rules like government. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't like clowns. That's fine, but this kind of reminds me of the arbitrary, uh, you know, decisions these days about what's offensive and what's not. In a way, this is similar to the idea of being offended or offending people, scaring people. Um, I mean, who knows what particular costume might particularly trigger someone in that sense. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have certain fears of certain things, but just because they're not clowns, just singling out clowns seems pretty bizarre. And yeah, I mean, why not let people express themselves? You know, if we still are allowed to do that these days, and if the city council thinks clowns are really scary, I'd imagine what their reaction is to the surveillance state doing all, spying on children. I wonder if that scares those people at all, or if it's just the false clowns. But let me check out some comments here. Danielle says, "Bad morning, but happy Halloween. I liked your little ghost hosts on your link." Yes, thank you, and happy Halloween to all of you as well. Max says, "Bad morning." Danielle says, "Yes, life is spooky these days, for sure. Feel like I am in some weird version of life in these times." Danielle says, "I will be handing out candy to the kids tonight." Awesome. My neighborhood is pretty old-fashioned. Looking forward to saying boo to some of the news. LOL. Bright and sunny here for a change. Somehow I don't think I will freak out over a 3-year-old in a clown costume. Good to hear. Yeah, it's always good to hear. I just have good memories of trick-or-treating as a kid, and that was a lot of fun. And unfortunately, that's, anything fun these days seems to be under attack. There's been some stories of city councils trying to ban older kids from trick-or-treating, I think age, 12 or 13 and up, which, if teenagers want to go trick-or-treating, why not If they're going to be treated as children, especially in public schools, then why then say you're too old to dress up and go trick-or-treating or whatever? It just seems hypocritical. And I dressed up as Casper once as when I was 6, and that was one of my favorites. And I remember random people coming up to me on the street and just yelling "boo" in my face, and that was pretty interesting, pretty cool. That was back when I had my mom to create interesting costumes for me. But once that ended, I'm like just really horrible at choosing costumes. But in any case, we'll move on to some even more spooky news here. This is from our friend from Maxim.com, written by their staff. New laser assault rifle can silently sear flesh from half a mile away. The whole person will be set on fire. Elon Musk's flame playthings compared to this lethal new laser rifle. Chinese scientists at the Xi'an Institute of Optics and Precision developed a fully functioning prototype of the ZKZM 500 laser assault rifle. The 15 millimeter caliber weapon is being compared to an AK-47 because of its similar 6.6 pound weight. Power like something straight out of. According to researchers who wish to remain anonymous, the ZKZM 500 fires an energy beam undetectable to the human eye that can pass through glass and cause the instant carbonization of human flesh from half a mile away. The pain will be beyond endurance, one researcher said. It can burn through clothes in a split second. If the fabric is flammable, the whole person will be set on fire. Nobody will know where the attack came from, another anonymous researcher added. It will look like an accident. It will cost $15,000 to manufacture at large scale production and can fire 1,000 shots on a single charge from a lithium ion battery. Though it clearly has deadly potential, the ZKZM 500 also has non lethal applications. The Southern China Morning Post has further details. In the event of a hostage situation, it could be used to fire through windows at targets and temporarily disable the kidnappers while other units move in to rescue their captives. It could also be used in covert military operations. The beam is powerful enough to burn through a gas tank and ignite the fuel storage facility in a military airport. The lasers cannot kill a target with a single shot, but if fired at a person for long enough, the weapons would start to burn a hole in their body, cutting through them like a surgical knife. Anti-terrorism squads in the Chinese armed police will likely be the first to test these laser guns in the field. Your move, Elon. And the article ends there. Yeah, that's a pretty terrifying prospect. As if all the things out there already um, being employed by different governments around the world weren't scary enough. Now, apparently, we're on the verge of having well, not we, but the existence of such a weapon is on brink, apparently, of a laser weapon that could just burn holes through your skin, even through glass or other barriers. So that's pretty disturbing, and just keep that in the back of your mind there, and with all of the constant back and forth between U.S. government and Chinese government. If the Chinese now are going to have a bizarre laser weapon, laser rifle, it's definitely unsettling, to say the least. All right. Daniel says boo. Yes. All right. This next article is from CNN.com. I don't know, spooky or just upsetting and ridiculous, but also unsurprising. Written Frederick, the $5 billion election, how the terms became the most expensive in history. The 2018 midterm election will go down as the most expensive in U.S. history. A week out, election to influence congressional midterm elections already has surged to a record-smashing 4.7 billion, according to a new tally of activity by candidates, political parties, and their outside allies. Democratic donors are fueling the dramatic increase, according to the analysis by the nonpartisan Center for Responsive Politics. It predicts spending will surpass 5.2 billion by November 6, a 35% jump over the 2014 midterms and the largest leap in at least 2 decades. In all, Democratic House candidates have raised more than 951 million, far exceeding the 637 million that went to their Republican rivals, according to the center's tally. Money raised directly by candidates goes further than funds collected by outside groups because television stations must provide candidates the lowest available advertising rate in the weeks leading up to the election. Other groups active in the midterms, such as super PACs, do not qualify for the lower rates. The Democratic candidates' lopsided fundraising advantage is also playing out in the most competitive races. Over the course of the election cycle, donors have sent 166.8 million to Democratic candidates in the 30 House contests CNN has identified as toss-ups. Republicans in those races collected just 90.7 million. You don't need to be a political analyst to say that a lot of this is driven by rage. Sarah Briner, the center's research director, said of the surging donations to Democrats, you have people in places like Boston and Chicago and San Francisco and New York who are making political giving part of the strategy to express their dissatisfaction with the president. Democrats need to flip just 23 Republican seats to take control of the House, and dozens of races remain too close to call. While the new figures underscore the enormous energy driving the Democratic Party's base ahead of the November 6 election, it remains to be seen whether the big cash influx to individual Democratic candidates will result in success at the polls. Large Republican donors are helping make up the difference in crucial races, and the party committees led by the Republican National Committee are also raising big sums. Among the big donors, Nevada casino mogul Sheldon Adelson and his wife Miriam lead the way. They have handed out more than 113 million to groups aiding GOP candidates. It's the most money the Adelsons have ever disclosed spending in an election cycle. Democratic mega donors are also giving big sums. San Francisco billionaire and possible 2020 contender Tom Steyer had donated 51 million to federal races through mid-October, and another possible White House aspirant, former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, also is writing large checks to help Democrats. Michael Malbin, executive director of the nonprofit Campaign Finance Institute, said the midterms may turn more on voter perceptions of Trump than any other factor. We are seeing rough parity both in the party committees and in the roster of rich people supporting each side, he said. The president is the one dominating the agenda, either positively or negatively, depending on which side you're on. That's the conclusion of that article. And it sounds like, yeah, a lot of the Democratic leaning rich people out among a lot of these big cities are definitely pouring lots of money in, because apparently the rhetoric is again that this is the most important election ever, as it seems to be every time. Somehow every election is supposed to be the most important one of our lifetimes. But people just keep going along with it and don't never realize that they're being told the same crap, each election cycle, and that I don't know whatever happened to that old quote of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is insanity. Apparently, most people in the general public don't seem to pick up on that at all and just keep falling for the same partisan tricks, fitting for today. And that's our trick for today, I guess. All this money being spent on more political crap, among all the issues going on that, in this country, all the people out there struggling to make ends meet and whatnot, and all the people especially who claim to care so much about the poor and whatnot, instead of donating that money to actually do something to directly improve the lives of someone, who may be struggling. It's all just going into politics, and we'll see what the effect of that is, which ultimately will be nothing, if we've learned anything from the past. But whatever happened to the Democrats crying about too much money in politics? It seems they're fine with it as long as it's money going to the candidate they want, or the party or the cause that they support. And suddenly they can't get enough of all this money coming in. As the article states, Democrats seem to be outraising or outspending Republicans so far, um, by a wide margin. I'm definitely getting really sick of the commercials. It is creepy how these political ads just creep up and they just increase in frequency the closer you get to election day. I mean, I started noticing them, a couple months ago, but now, I mean, they're just back to back. Can't get away from them. Just nonstop crap. And I wondered, who's paying for all of this. And apparently, this one race in the area I live in is one of the most expensive in the country just on its own. Congressional race in, I guess, what's called Washington's 8th District. I saw a local article that said 25 million has been spent just in that particular district, and it's some incumbent Republican running against. There's a Democratic challenger who just keeps running ads about how she cares a lot about the American people because she is a doctor, and so she thinks she's uniquely qualified to quote unquote fix healthcare in America, which of course, as a left liberal, to her that means um, single payer and a complete takeover of healthcare by the government, and that is truly scary in my mind. That's a real life horror story, having government able to control your healthcare. And as Ron Paul has said once, having government take over healthcare is like admitting that the government owns you. And that's not something that I personally want in any sense. All right. Comments. Danielle says, "Gotta love the cognitive dissonance." For sure. Okay, this next article comes from good old. It seems like all types of stories they publish, and related tech issues. And today's no exception. Uh, this is written by Mass Private One. Surveillance cameras can identify everyone by talking to their cell phones. Surveillance cameras will soon be able to identify everyone by talking to their cell phones. This system basically allows surveillance cameras to talk to the public through their individual phones, Purdue University doctoral student Si Wan Chow said. As the above video illustrates, soon nowhere will be safe from Big Brother's prying eyes. And they just have a video by this company or by the researchers at the university at Purdue, um, kind of showing that off. But the article is a pretty good description. Purdue University's Simba has developed a camera to human surveillance called FADE, spelled PHADE. That's an acronym of some kind, otherwise known as Private Human Addressing. The name of this new program seems appropriate as everyone's privacy will soon fade away, pun intended. Before I discuss fade, I would like to point out a few important facts. Purdue University is also known as Purdue Homeland. PHU's mission is to enhance homeland security and validate homeland security technology. DHS/PHU has an entire section devoted to giving threat assessments of through 12 grade students. We have created a threat assessment tool that schools can use for an all hazards approach. You cannot make this stuff up. The effect on everyone's privacy cannot be understated. There's massive surveillance. FADE will make those programs look trivial due to its sheer size. With the number of cell phone users expected to reach 4.68 billion by next year, FADE will allow governments to pry into people's lives like never before. Purdue University's newsroom claims FADE will protect everyone's privacy by blurring itself by boasting that can use FADE to enhance public safety. A white paper titled Enabling Public Cameras to Talk to the Public is so Orwellian in nature that I find it extremely difficult to write about. This paper asks, is it possible for cameras in public areas, say ceiling cameras in a museum, to send personalized messages to people without knowing any addresses of their phone? We define this kind of addressing and develop an end-to-end system called FADE to solve it. Unlike traditional data transmission protocols that need to first learn the destination's address, our cameras rely on viewing users' motion patterns and use the uniqueness of these patterns as the address for communication. Once receiving the wireless broadcast from the cameras, the user's phone can load the mode address of the packet data and accept the packet upon a good match. This is truly frightening. FADE allows CCTV cameras to identify people in real time, even if they don't know the cell phone's IP or MAC address. Without knowing users' smartphone addresses, FADE is able to communicate with them, relying on the motion patterns captured by cameras and using these patterns destination. The paper that FADE can identify people by how they walk and what they are looking at in real time. FADE uses motion extraction or gait matching to identify individuals. First, an efficient motion feature should have high distinguishability, which means that it holds among different people, used to easily discriminate their walking behaviors, and that is not even the worst of it. FADE also uses gesture-based messaging to identify what a person is looking at. We detect 3 gestures, i.e. pointing to the left wall, the right wall, or the roof, using the body parts generated by OpenPose, and send customized to the user according to. What is FADE's real mission? FADE's mission is to identify and associate individuals in camera view with their smartphones. Imagine how law enforcement will use this. All a police officer would need to do is point a CCTV camera at a person of interest and know in real time who they are, where they live, and exactly what they are looking at. To call FADE a privacy nightmare, you would just. That's the end of that article. So apparently, this new technology being worked on by Purdue University is would employ motion cues to communicate with people's cell phones without even knowing their IP address. And I guess from there, the cameras can extract data linked to people's cell phone accounts and all of that stuff, just somehow based on identifying them visually, which I need to do more research on this because I'm not too tech savvy and a lot of this goes over my head, but certainly sounds like something even farther above what we've heard recently, being able to basically take people's information from their phones because everyone is walking around with these devices in their pockets. Aside, we already know that it's a GPS device now that can be used to track you wherever you are. Now, if these certain cameras are available, they can basically find out your name, your address, and all that type of stuff. So I guess again, this will depend on how proliferated this technology becomes, and potentially if it's common enough, then you won't be able to go anywhere without people being able to identify you, and it just seems like another way of to get around using biometrics per se, since we've already read about a lot of issues that have come up with that, with its accuracy not being quite that good or quite as good as the companies would like it to be. So this is probably another option they're looking at to get people's identity via, video footage and all of that. So, um, you know, that's a real nightmare. And, this, I find this story to be, you know, a lot more terrifying than some of the typical Halloween movies out there. As I said earlier, I rewatched Halloween yesterday, and I didn't find it too scary, really. Just kind of that style. I guess it's more of a suspense type thing. But I don't know. Let me know if you guys have any recommendations. I'm kind of interested in watching some other horror films to distract myself from reality later today. So let me know if you all have any favorite Halloween films or horror films out there that you know of. And let's see. Let's see if there's any comments on that. Danielle says boo to Fade. And Danielle says, shoot, most of the time I forget my phone and leave it at home. LOL. Well, that's good. That's what we should all do, and I try to do that more certainly, because there's really not too much good coming in terms of surveillance and with people voluntarily carrying around these devices. We're just making it really easy for them, and it's probably the next easiest way to identify people other than a potential implant, or RFID type implant in people's skin. That would be probably the only thing I can think of, that would more seal our fate in terms of surveillance than cell phones currently do. All right, this next article is from ZeroHedge.com from their Mafia hitman is pre-suspect in jailhouse raid Bulger. Hours after news of the jailhouse murder of Noted crime boss James Whitey Bulger leaked to the news media, rumors began circulating that the slaying of the 89-year-old wheelchair-confined Bulger may have been carried out with the possible tacit approval of federal authorities who were worried that Bulger, whose long-rumored status as a government informant was laid bare during his 2013 trial, might expose corruption at the highest levels of the FBI's Witness Cooperation Program. Authorities initially said a mafia-linked suspect was under his role in the killing, but amid an official information blackout, TMZ and the Daily Mail reported the grisly details of Bulger's death after being transferred to the USP Hazleton facility in West Virginia on Tuesday. Bulger was released into the general population, but before he could even be officially booked into the prison, the former Irish mob boss was whacked by 3 prisoners who reportedly wheeled him to a secluded area, beat him with a combination lock stuffed in a sock before attempting to gouge out his eyes, an old school organized crime gesture of contempt for rats or criminals who give information about their underworld associates to law enforcement. While those reports were based on anonymously sourced accounts, the Boston Globe appeared to confirm these accounts when it reported late Tuesday that a notorious New England mafia hitman suspect in the slaying of Bulger. Fotios Freddy Gius, 51, who is serving a life sentence for his involvement in the 2003 assassination of Springfield, Massachusetts mob boss Big Al Bruno, is believed to be behind Bulger's slaying, and according to the Globe's sources, he hasn't disputed his role in the killing to authorities. Gius's friends weren't surprised to hear that he may have been involved in the killing. Freddie hated rats, and Gius's friend Ted McDonough told the paper Freddie hated guys who abused women. Whitey was a rat who killed women. It's probably that simple. Even Gius' former lawyer who represented Gius in his mafia murder case said he wasn't surprised to hear that his former client had refused to dispute his role in the killing and had refused to identify any accomplices. He wouldn't rat on anybody, said attorney David Hoose. He had no respect for anyone who did. Meanwhile, the Massachusetts prosecutor who convicted Bulger offered no words of remorse for a man whom he once described as one of the cruelest killers in the criminal underworld, per CNN. A statement Tuesday from Andrew Lelling, the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, was brief. It made no mention of Bulger other than he had died. We received word this morning about the death of James Whitey. Thoughts are with his victims and their families, the statement said. As Gius' involvement is looking increasingly likely, nobody in the Bureau of Prisons or anywhere else in the federal government has bothered to explain why Bulger was left in such a vulnerable position after a seemingly arbitrary transfer from his previous facility in Florida. And that's the end of that article. So I don't know if you all remember, hadn't known much about it before the 2013 case where I believe he had been in hiding for decades, and then he just was found in 2013, and that's when he was prosecuted and sent to prison. I vaguely recall that whole thing, or I remember a lot of coverage of him and some of his past crimes, and apparently there was a lot of talk about him potentially being an informant, and I guess to those who think that's what he really was, this apparently his killing, the way he died, or the circumstances around that might lend credence to that belief, given that the guy who is accused of killing him isn't really contesting it, and some people are thinking maybe there was, some kind of collusion with the people who were supposed to be the corrections officers and such, because it just seems bizarre that this 90-year-old guy in a wheelchair was kind of just left exposed there, kind of left hanging. But you know there's a lot of history about the mafia and organized crime and the police. I mean, of course, there's a lot of um, things going on, trading favors, informants, because I mean, how else would such organized crime still exist if there wasn't corruption going on, with people paying off local police and whatnot. There's where there's a will, there's a way, and even though the police make a big show of, the mafia and how scary they are and this and that, you can be sure there's collusion going on between the police and between other organized crimes like crime gangs like the mafia, and who knows? It's one of those things that, unfortunately, those of us who are just regular people, will probably never know, all of the secrets underneath cases like this. It'll be pretty much impossible for us to ever know the true facts in a lot of these cases. The extent to which perhaps there was corruption, there was looking the other way when convenient by law enforcement. And I think that was even a topic of discussion back when Bulger was found. The idea that he and his wife at the time had been living under the radar for so many years and weren't detected despite being wanted for decades. People speculated then that maybe he had a deal where he was being left alone and not put in jail. So who knows? A lot of just craziness, especially around mafia type stuff. It seems, uh, we only hear about things that are, just things here and there that are released. And I think there's a lot more below the surface that we'll never know about. And with that, I'll check out the comments. Daniel says, Happy Halloween, and remember, Big Brother is bugging you. For sure. Danielle says, nothing suspicious about his death within a few hours of being in a different prison, right? And Daniel says, more than suspicious. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't personally know too much about uh, a lot of the goings on with the mafia and organized crime. I think that may be more of an East Coast thing. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it seems these cities like Boston, New York are where most of it's taking place these days. Or even historically, I guess that's where it originated. But in any case, this next article is all somewhat spooky in itself, and this reference to a missing plane that disappeared about 5 years ago, and the wreckage has never been found thus far. And there's still, always a lot of speculation about what happened to it and why wreckage was never found. But this article is from nzherald.co.nz. A third entity, mystery company hiding MH370 secret. French investigators have uncovered a mysterious third entity which may be withholding technical data about the path taken by missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. They have also identified a number of curious passengers aboard the Boeing 777 who they believe warrant further investigation. The potentially explosive new developments were revealed by, oh God, I've never, see, Ghislaine Watrellos, a French national who lost his wife and two teenage children on MH370 following his meeting last week with judges overseeing the Gendarmerie Air Transport GTA investigation. Watrellos said he was told the French team had found quote-unquote inconsistencies in the Malaysian investigation's official report and identified the presence of curious passengers whom we should continue to investigate. They include a Malayan and aeronautics specialist seated directly under MH370's SATCOM module who potentially had the technical knowledge to hack the plane's communication systems and disguise its route. The GTA, an arm of the French military, is seeking to verify satellite and other technical data used by the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, or ATSB, to plot planes' journey to a remote part of the southern Indian Ocean, where it is believed to have crashed in 2014 with 239 people on board. Watrello said investigators hope to travel to the U.S. to meet with the FBI, which examined MH370 Captain Zahari Shah's home flight simulator, and representatives of Boeing in a bid to obtain and re-examine raw data. A similar trip planned in September 2017 was canceled. U.S. authorities demanded the signing of confidentiality clauses to protect Boeing industry secrets. He said French investigators had identified a third entity in possession of information and/or data relating to the movements of the missing plane. We are a little angry, and now we want to say stop. It is time that the United States really cooperate on this issue, Watrello said. It is necessary to go there because there are entities that hold important information for understanding what happened on this flight. In addition to verifying data provided by the FBI and Boeing, investigators were seeking to establish whether the third entity sold software capable of reprogramming or even hacking the SATCOM, the antenna that communicates to the Inmarsat satellite from the aircraft. The essential trail is the Inmarsat data. Either they are wrong or they have been hacked, Watrello said. However, these satellite data are essential to better understand the trajectory of the aircraft. The identity of the third entity is unclear, but in a Facebook message posted over the weekend, Watrellos refers to SITA. SITA is a company which supplies Malaysia Airlines with communications via VHF radio and Inmarsat satellites for its fleet's ACARS aircraft communications addressing and reporting system avionics. In the wake of MH370's disappearance, SITA issued a statement saying it was cooperating with authorities investigating the plane's fate. The Malaysia Airlines ACARS avionics communications via the SITA network is proprietary to the airline, it said. We are fully supporting the airline and all relevant authorities in their ongoing investigation. Engineer and aviation expert Dr. Victor Ianello, who was a member of the independent group of advisors assisting the ATSB in the original search for MH370, expressed doubt the French would uncover evidence data had been deliberately removed or hacked. It's not clear what additional information the French investigators expect to obtain while in the U.S. Boeing has cooperated with the Annex 13 investigation team and is unlikely to provide private French investigators with data that has not already been made public, he wrote on his blog. Meanwhile, the FBI is unlikely to release information on matters related to ongoing or past investigations. The mysterious third entity referred to by Mr. Watrellos that might be selling software capable of maliciously altering SATCOM data is also unknown, although there are a handful of companies in the US and Canada that supply hardware and software for designing, building, and testing parts of the Inmarsat network. Ianello said independent investigators trying to crack the MH370 mystery were at an impasse. Although the overwhelming consensus is that MH370 did indeed crash in the southern Indian Ocean, the considerable efforts of official and private investigators have not succeeded in locating the debris field on the seabed, he said. The data we have, notably the satellite data, is imprecise, so additional data is needed to reconstruct the trajectory of the plane. There is always the chance that during Mr. Watrellos' visit to the U.S., some new evidence or insights will be uncovered that help us to better understand the disappearance and to find the plane. More likely, the existence of helpful new information will be found in Malaysia. France is the only country still actively investigating the fate of the plane which vanished en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on March 8, 2014, with 239 on board. A 3-year, $200 million Australian taxpayer-funded search of a previously uncharted 120,000 square kilometer section of the seabed along the Seventh Arc failed to uncover any trace of the doomed jet. A second search carried out earlier this year by deep sea exploration company Ocean Infinity, which was offered a finder's fee of up to 90 million by the Malaysian government if it found the wreckage within 90 days, has also come up empty. And so that's the end of that story. Just basically an update on this long ongoing story, a mystery essentially, of flight MH370, which disappeared almost 5 years ago now. And of course, this Mr. Watrillos is a family member of people who died, presumably in the crash. And so it makes sense that he'd still be wanting to look for answers and press the sources or the entities out there for information, including Boeing and the FBI for whatever info they might have. Especially, uh, I can't imagine what it's like to have that uncertainty and the unknowingness, not having the closure of at least finding evidence of the plane crashing somewhere is, I feel like that's probably worse than, having confirmation, just because, there's part of your mind that's always like, you never know what happened, especially this day and age with all kinds of stuff going on around the world between different governments, and the technology available. Some of this is about, research about potential software that might have been used to hack into and, distort the information being given out by this missing airplane. And that might explain why it's missing and why nothing has been found. But yeah, I mean, this day and age, nothing would surprise me. And so, although most likely, it's simply crashed somewhere, there's always that part of people that's like, who knows? It's a really bizarre mystery, and I wonder if it'll ever be conclusively solved. But certainly have my thoughts with the family members because I can't imagine what that would be like. It's, all right, let me see if I can get my comments working this morning. It's, there's a link. Daniel posted a link to ioactive.com. Let's see. All right. And Daniel says, don't forget the mob in Chicago too. Oh, that's right. Yeah, big during. Well, that was the home of, yeah, his name escapes me now, but one of the bigwigs of Prohibition. Yeah, Chicago was definitely a big place for the mob scene during Prohibition. That's right. Thanks for reminding me of that. I always forget about Chicago. Although you would think I wouldn't forget about Chicago since I did grow up not too far from there, but they kind of lay under the radar. And Danielle says, boo. Yes, yes, everything's very spooky at this point. Daniel says, or Vegas. Daniel says, more than plausible. Remember, the ATSB system is weak, so don't expect SATCOM to be any stronger. And yeah, that's in reference to this system. I covered that story last week, I think, about another system being criticized because it's vulnerable to attack, and things like that, are reasons why people come up with, so-called conspiracy theories, or, people like this family member who are still looking for answers, even with all the official outlets, all the official people telling him basically, just give up. You're not gonna find anything new, but, we always need people willing to challenge, and I'm sure that's probably on his own at his own expense as well. So good luck to him. And let's see. Daniel says all the facts on SATCOM are there on the site linked. And Danielle says Al Capone. Yeah, there. Thanks for that. His name escaped me. The one who infamously was put in jail on tax evasion. Not anything else. And unfortunately, I hear people use him as an example for why, being able to put people in jail for not paying their, money to the government. He gets thrown out there as, see, if not for tax evasion laws, we would never have gotten Al Capone. It's like, well, we would have never gotten Al Capone if not for government banning alcohol. So all these things are, intertwined, and there's never a government solution to crime. And related to that, let's see, touch on another article here from yeah, I'll just quickly touch on this article. This is from Reason.com by Jacob Sullum. Calls for common sense gun control sound senseless after Pittsburgh shooting. Politicians' demands for stricter laws are notably lacking in detail and logic. Within hours of Saturday's massacre at a Pittsburgh synagogue, Democratic politicians were calling for stricter gun control. As usual, their comments were notably lacking in detail and logic. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf said, "We have been saying this is one too many for far too long. Dangerous weapons are putting our citizens in harm's way." Nancy Pelosi said, "Thoughts and prayers are not enough. Congress must finally act on common sense bipartisan gun violence prevention legislation." Wow, what a word salad that is. Common sense bipartisan gun violence prevention legislation. Jeez, do these people even live in reality? I mean, does anyone even talk like that? I don't understand. But former President Obama said we have to stop making it so easy for those who want to harm the innocent to get their hands on a gun. In what way might the, quote, common sense bipartisan gun violence prevention legislation recommended by Pelosi and implicitly endorsed by Wolf and Obama have stopped Robert Bowers, the accused Pittsburgh gunman, from murdering 11 people? The AP reports that Bowers legally owned the Colt AR-15 rifle and the three Glock 357 handguns he used in the attack, which means he did not have a disqualifying criminal or psychiatric record, hence universal background checks would not have helped. A renewed federal assault weapon ban, such as the one backed by Senator Feinstein, would have covered new rifles similar to Bowers' AR-15, but it would not have applied to more than 16 million Feinstein disapproved rifles already owned by Americans, including the one owned by Bowers. Even if the government could make all those guns magically disappear, there are plenty of equally deadly substitutes. A New York Times editorial published on Sunday claims bills like Feinstein's ban high-capacity weapons, but that is not true. The features that distinguish the guns Feinstein wants to prohibit from the ones she would leave on the market, things like adjustable stocks, barrel shrouds, and pistol grips, have nothing to do with how many rounds the gun can fire before reloading, or with caliber or rate of fire. It's true that Feinstein also wants to ban large capacity ammunition feeding devices, meaning magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds. The Times also weirdly claims that universal background checks and red flag laws that take guns away from the mentally unstable could make attacks like the one on Tree of Life Synagogue less deadly. The point of those policies is not to reduce the average death toll of such attacks, but to prevent them altogether by depriving would-be mass murderers of the means to carry them out. As mentioned, background checks manifestly would not have prevented the Pittsburgh attack because they did not prevent the Pittsburgh attack. What about a red flag law which allows various parties, such as cops and relatives, to seek court orders prohibiting gun possession by people who are deemed a threat to themselves or others? It is hard to see how such a law could have made a difference in this case, unless anti-Semitic comments on social media platforms suffice to prove a gun owner poses a danger or threat to public safety. If that were the standard, people could easily lose their Second Amendment rights for exercising their First Amendment rights. The problem is not that gun controllers immediately take advantage of the latest bloody atrocity to push their policy agenda. The problem is that they do it so poorly. Depending on your perspective, maybe that is not really a problem at all. And that's the end of that article. Just again, reminder of, just the typical opportunism from the Democrats, constantly trying to disarm everyone in America, because that worked so well with Prohibition. I really have, no words to say about that at this point. The idea that, making it harder for people to legally purchase weapons will do anything to reduce, those who are determined to actually hurt or kill people. I'm sorry, but that's just a really just intellectually bankrupt argument. We know that all of this is really rooted in control, just like so many European countries now, as well as Canada. Have pretty strict gun control, and ultimately it really doesn't stop crime, and there's always ways to go about crime, and these things won't end without a real shift in attitudes, a shift in just society, and that just goes way deeper than the existence of a tool like a gun. And politicians are the ones feeding the level of insanity going on in this country and others. It's just convenient for them to stir up all the insanity and partisanship, and then to come in and play victim and pretend to be so concerned, like, oh, we have to do something about the guns because people are dying. It's like, well, if you weren't, going around just adding toxicity to the world with just this need to control and dominate people's lives, and making everything the most important election, life or death, or fascist or racist, everybody is, out to get you. Maybe if we tone down that rhetoric, then people wouldn't be losing their minds, but the politicians would lose their status in society if not for Americans turning to them in to in times of chaos. I mean, politicians exist because of chaos, because of people not able to take responsibility for themselves and their families, and unable to voluntarily work together to solve problems, and instead looking to the inefficiency and self-servingness of these people in government to solve it. And you'll never have peace when you have a system like that. And that's the reality. And it's not about, and of course, as our article says, we're even in the U.S. we're on a slippery slope now to people being able to arbitrarily take away people's Second Amendment rights based on, looser and looser criterion. Again, in the name of protecting people, but ultimately it just strips people of their inborn right to protect themselves, because we know we can't rely on the police, and that is a very scary place to end this. I definitely don't want to be in a place that's a complete, I mean, if you don't have guns, if you don't have means of self-defense, you're a slave. I mean, put simply, and there's really nothing more disturbing than that, and more terrifying. And I'll see if there's any last comments here. Danielle says guns now, cutlery tomorrow. Boo. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's not really nothing in the fictional horror films that can outdo a government that has a monopoly on weapons. I mean, there's nothing scarier than that. We only need to look at history to see the evidence of that. And with that, it's a good place to end for today. I hope all of you have a good Halloween. Hope you have fun. And just another note. Let's see, it's Wednesday. Yeah, another note, final note that we are looking for more hosts, and let us know if you're interested in that in the Discord or in the comments of the video. And with that, I'll see all of you tomorrow. I hope you all don't succumb to some scary clown, someone in a scary clown costume. But I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a bad morning, everyone. Remember, screw the state, fuck the system. Happy Halloween.